Most of you probably have a pretty good idea of what's going on in Mexico, but in case some of our participants don't, Mexico has become something of a darling of commentators in recent months, with much excitement and optimism surrounding the prospects for this so-called Aztec tiger. And it's unsurprising, given the close connection between the Mexican economy and its energy sector, that much of this optimism would also translate to the oil industry. And I'm sure Jorge will go over a lot of this, but there are several hurdles before the country's energy sector can unleash this new potential. By way of background, for over 7 decades, the Mexican oil industry has functioned as a state-run monopoly run by Pemex, the national oil company, and Pemex still contributes around a third of Mexico's federal budget. More problematic for Mexico has been the over-reliance on a single energy source and an underinvestment in new technology. And while the country's overall energy outlook has dramatically improved in recent years, Pemex lacks the financial capacity and, more importantly, the technological know-how to be able to take advantage of these new, more technically difficult reserves, including deep water, mature fields, and Chicontepec. I'm sure Jorge will also talk about the shale issues. And we're delighted to have Jorge Lopez Cardenas with us today to discuss some of these challenges, but also all the opportunities for Mexican oil and gas and the increasing role of technology in exploiting these reserves and unleashing the country's energy sector potential. The way in which the industry tackles this new energy era will likely have a lasting impact on Mexico's economic growth and development. Thank you, Jorge. Please take it away.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction, Alexis, and good morning, good afternoon to everybody. Thank you also to the Institute of the Americas for having me in your new webcast series. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today. So, the main challenges after the easy oil in Mexico are perhaps looking at them at a 30,000 feet overview. They can be summarized in two charts. I hope you can see these charts now. If first, if you look at the top on the left, you can see that the decline of oil production from a peak of around 3.4 million barrels per day occurred around the year 2003, 2004. And it has gone down to today's production of just over 2.5 million barrels per day. The second chart also shows the other problem, which is the decline of the proven reserves, and that gives the overall big picture. But the challenges and the details behind this are far more complex. So what I would like to do is in the next few minutes, I want to share and discuss with you some of the issues behind this picture and also talk about the great opportunities that we see in Mexico for the energy sector in general and for the oil industry in particular. Finally, at the end, I want to show you some brief examples of the role of some key enabling technologies. So that's the plan. So this chart, if you look at it, it shows the historical price of the oil for the last 70 years. You can see in the red line, in red is the price compensated by inflation. And you can note that, fortunately for Mexico, after about maybe 20 years of low oil prices and just when the production started to decrease around 2004, the price of oil increased significantly. Let me see. How can I get a pointer in here? I'm trying to get the laser.
The laser pointer. I believe if you go down to the bottom right-hand corner and you see a little symbol, I think if you click on that, then you should see this. There's a star sort of symbol that says laser pointer.
Okay.
There you go.
So here you can see that for about 20 years, the prices of oil were relatively low, below 40 barrels a day, before $40 per barrel, and about 2004 is when it started to climb significantly. So today's perspectives are going to be more demanding now. So it was a fortunate event, but today we cannot count on further climbing of the oil prices. But we can be sure of the need of more energy for the increase of population growth in Mexico. For the case of Mexico, is close to 1%, around 0.8% per year, and the need of combating poverty and increase the standard of living. According to the Comisión Federal de Electricidad, or CFE, the coverage of electricity in Mexico is now close to 98%, which is pretty good. But we still have over 2 million people without electricity at their homes. So advance to the next slide here. Okay. So let's look at the fuels. Here we can see the fuels used by the CFE to generate electricity. So in this chart, we can see, first of all, that compared with many countries, even industrialized countries, Mexico has the advantage that the percentage of electricity that is generated from coal is relatively low. Is less than 6%. And you can see that the use of natural gas, which is a much cleaner fuel, has increased. All of that is good. But unfortunately, fuel oil, which you can see at the bottom of the chart, in the last few years has also been increasing and is more than 7% nowadays. And we understand that the CFE has been forced to use fuel oil instead of natural gas in some of their thermoelectric plants because of lack of gas. And the similar situation is also true for several industries. So if you look at the next graph, now it looks at the perspectives, what is the forecast of the fuels that CFE plans to use up to the year 2027. And you can see that gas is going to be very important. Now, ironically, Pemex today is forced to burn over 100 million cubics of 100 million of cubic feet of gas per day because of lack of infrastructure. So we still have too much flaring, and infrastructure is one of the big challenges and obstacles that Mexico is facing to go to a more economy based on gas. Nevertheless, gas is very abundant in Mexico, and the Secretary on Energy has and CFE they have plans to move to the gas industry and install more infrastructure and more gas lines. We still have lots of gas, and in addition to the traditional gas reservoirs like Burgos and Veracruz, Mexico has lots of shale gas. This slide shows the areas that Pemex has identified for prospective resources of shale gas in Mexico. Now, the actual Mexican reserves of shale gas and shale oil still have to be determined. You can see on that table some of the preliminary numbers that Pemex has published. The Energy Information Agency has also published some numbers for Mexico, which are bigger than that. Over there you can see Pemex is something around 140 trillion cubic feet of gas. The Energy Information Agency, they speak about perhaps 600 trillion cubic of feet. It doesn't matter which numbers you take. There's a lot of gas. There's a lot of gas potential in Mexico. And shale gas, as you have seen, has been on the news a lot recently. It has been a game changer for sure, but it also has become a very controversial topic. What you can say for sure is that it has changed the economy of many states in the United States, and all over the world is looking at it. There's been a lot of public concerns around shale gas, some of the effects of fracturing, which are completely misunderstood and they are not valid. possibilities of creating earthquakes, contamination of aquifers. In any case, the lessons to be learned is that public perception is real and could become a big problem. Some of the concerns are valid, and to me it's strange that some of those concerns are not the ones that people talk about. We can talk more about that at the end of the session if you want. But one thing for sure is that shale gas, shale oil has become a big game changer, and we're going to see much more of that in the next few years. Probably you've seen in the news about the possibility of the U.S. becoming even energy independent. I don't believe that. Neither the Secretary of Energy believes that. These are some of the forecast of production from the Energy Information Agency. But the bottom line is that you can see that definitively shale gas, shale oil is going to have a big impact in the energy sector of the U.S. in a lot of places around the world. And the lessons learned in the U.S. for Mexico are good because we can look at it and we can take the good things and be careful about the lessons learned on how to implement them in Mexico. So not only gas is very abundant in Mexico, but oil is also very abundant. The problem is that when we look at the reserves of oil in Mexico, it is heavy or extra heavy. So this chart shows the 1P, 2P, and 3P reserves of published for Mexico, and you can see the percentage of the heavy oil on the green section, and the majority is going to be heavy and extra heavy. So that puts additional challenges. So clearly, unconventionals is going to be the next frontier. And for Mexico, unconventionals will present many unconventional challenges as well, but also great opportunities. So dealing with unconventionals is, to say the least, gonna be operating outside of the comfort zone, like a fish going out of the water, right? For some people, but it's going to present a lot of opportunities. And to me, unconventionals include heavy and extra heavy oil, shale gas, shale oil, but also complex reservoirs. And Mexico has some very unique and very challenging complex reservoirs that should be classified as unconventional. We have carbonates with fractures, we have them offshore as well, and of course we also have shale oil. And I would say don't forget deep water, which deep water is also unconventional. In the sense that it is something that we are not so used to work with it, and it requires a lot of planning ahead. And the production is going to be many, many years down the road. So taking all of this into account, Pemex and the Secretaría of Energía, the Secretary of Energy of Mexico, have created a business plan. Here you can see the covers of Pemex new business plan and the national energy strategy of CENER. And if you go through them, you will see some common and very important themes. Definitely deep water is there, heavy and extra heavy oil, complex reservoir as we mentioned, and shale gas, shale oil. All of them are included in this strategy. So let's talk about the challenges that unconventionals may present. And this is true not only in Mexico, this is true all over the world. The challenges for unconventionals go from the reservoir to the point of sale. If we just look at the challenges, for example, of just I'm missing here the rest of the slide, but that's okay. If we just look at the challenges at any one of them, like at the reservoir, we're gonna see that we have some new challenges, and the technologies that we normally apply to conventional reservoirs, they don't apply to heavy oil or to shale gas or to deep water. There's many other issues that need to be taken into account, like flow assurance, like drilling, well construction, and proper seismic illumination on pre-salt environments. The mobility is certainly a big problem, but also reservoir characterization and fluids characterization is a big challenge. Modeling and simulations are also big challenges because the rules don't apply. We have different fluids. It requires different equations of states. They are much more complex. So we have a new set of challenges for unconventionals that need to be taken into account. If we look at the challenges for Mexico, in addition to all of the challenges that unconventionals present, we have also the fact that, as I mentioned before, in Mexico we have very complex reservoirs. Some of them, like in Chicontepec, for example, compartmentalization is a big issue. The reservoirs are very complex, very low porosity. There's a lot of oil on it, but mobility is also a big issue. Just like with the extra heavy oils, here the oil is not extra heavy, but mobility is also a big problem. I mentioned carbonates with natural fractures, and some of those are offshore. Canada has a lot of heavy oil, for example, but it's not offshore, and it's not in natural. It is not in carbonates with natural fractures. Water management is also a big issue in Mexico, both with the produced water from many of the mature fields, many wells that have been shut down, and they could be look at them again by applying proper water management technologies, but also for the development of fracturing for some of these resources, like in shale gas. The supply of water is also a big issue, particularly in the north of Mexico, where water is a big issue. Security is also a new challenge and problem that we see that unfortunately has developed in the last few years in Mexico. But there's also some other universal challenges we have that go hand by hand with unconventionals. We have social problems. We have political problems. Every time that we try to work outside of the comfort zone or outside of the box, there's new rules, new conditions, the requirement for tax incentives, and sometimes the lack of them could be also a problem, like what Pemex is facing today for the development of gas. Public education is also very important and is becoming very important in the development of these non-conventionals. Security is becoming a big issue, not only in Mexico, but around the world. And in the oil industry, we are vulnerable, and we need to watch those events very carefully. Also, the transition to renewables is something that we need to be very well aware, and we need to work together. I don't see why renewables have to be in opposition with hydrocarbons. In fact, I think that we need to work together and apply some of the renewable technologies even to the production of our oil. So these are universal challenges that we have, and we can talk more about that at the end of the session if you want. I have lots of opinions about it, but let me move about the enabling technologies that are going to be important for some of these non-conventional reservoirs. Oops. Is jumping?
I don't think so. I don't know. I think it's...
Okay, let's go back to
There we go.
where we were.
There we go.
Okay. So if we look at the some of the technologies that are going to be needed, again it's jumping.
Oh, I don't know what it's doing. I'm very sorry. Nobody else should be able to have control over that. I've
But
never had this happen before.
okay,
Is
well,
it? Okay, let's hope it just. Okay. Are you maybe touching? Is it maybe your laptop?
um, no, no, I put it away from
Hmm. Okay, let me.
somehow. Okay, somehow they are moving. Well, sometimes technology can also be tricky, but but let me just mention some of the.
I don't know what's going on here. Let me go back. You keep talking. I'll see if I can fix this.
So certainly technology is going to be very important and is going to be a big enabler for the production of some of these unconventionals. So among the technologies that are going to be required is high resolution seismic and processing. That is going to be, for example, critical for shale gas, shale oil reservoirs, how to properly populate and be able to find the sweet spots on them. I mentioned also for deep water how to look on pre-salt environments is also very critical. Subsea technology is going to be critical also for deep water. Well construction with geosteering and new technologies that are being applied like MEMS, nanotechnology, geochemistry. But more important than all of that is the proper selection, adaptation, and integration of those technologies. So by themselves, they cannot solve the problem. It's going to be the proper selection, adaptation, and integration what is going to be paramount. So just to go briefly through some of the examples of those technologies, we can look, for example, at the role that seismic has has been playing in deep water exploration. And at the top of this slide, you can see how we have gone from a single boat doing the seismic with a single azimuth to now multiple boats moving to multi azimuth or wide azimuth. And the idea is that with multiple boats and shooting in different angles, you can have a better illumination of the pre-salt environment. Nowadays, at the bottom, you can see a coil shooting. We have a vessel going on circles, on spirals, advancing through the water. And we even do that now with not one boat, but with a couple of ships. We call that dual coil shooting. So anyway, these are technologies that allows for better illumination on the pre-salt environment. At the bottom on the right hand side, you can see in the United States, in the Gulf of Mexico, the areas that with different colors, in red is the traditional seismic that has been shot over the last 15 years. But you can see with the different colors how they have moved to the new technologies using wide azimuth and dual coils. So modeling is also extremely important. Modeling is the tool that we use to be able to optimize the development of a field. And the problem with modeling is that it's a great technology. It has improved a lot. It has become very sophisticated in the last few years, but it's always going to give you a result, nice results in colors and in 3 dimensions. The risk that we have is the possibility of garbage in, garbage out. So modeling is very important, but we need to be very careful about the input that we provide. And then again, in non-conventional reservoirs, it's very important to have the proper reservoir and fluid characterization, which is not the same as in conventionals. Let me see if now it advances. There's also new technologies that are trying to fill the gap on the resolution of the information. This chart on the top left tries to show the resolution that we have and the depth of investigation with different technologies. In blue at the bottom is like with logging technologies, which basically they allow us to have great resolution and understand what is happening around the wellbore, but doesn't have much depth of investigation. We have seismic on the other end, which now it gives you the depth of investigations of thousands of meters. But there is a gap in between, and there's new technologies that now are filling that gap. For example, doing logging between wells that will allow us to see what is happening with much greater depth of investigation and allow to fill that gap, which can be retrofitted to the models, and also to look at the movement of the fluids through the life of the reservoir. So these are new technologies that are becoming more and more important, and I think that for unconventionals are going to be paramount. The other one is moving the lab downhole. What if we can take a laboratory and make PVT analysis and flow assurance issues at the bottom of the well? Well, that is happening now. Now it's happening because of the development of miniaturized MEM sensors that we can put in logging tools, we can put in subsea stations, and the idea is to understand in the well what is happening. So these are going to be very important for many of these non-conventionals. I mentioned about low porosity carbonates. Over there, the challenge are big. The resolution of conventional logging tools is limited because of the low porosity. We're trying to see what is in the pores of those rocks, and the amount of the stuff that is in there is very little. So the resolution of the tools are not sufficient to identify properly what is in there. This is a big challenge, for example, when we try to identify what is the residual oil saturation in some of the carbonates, like in Cantarell or Acal. So there's new projects going on to be able to introduce new technologies based on the electric measurements, based on NMR, and based on the lithology identification that allow us now to see much better and to be able to determine the residual oil saturation and the lithology of those complex reservoirs. So Subsea Technologies. I think Subsea Technologies is also going to be a key element for deep water exploration and development. We require new compact, reliable, I would say configurable systems that can operate all the way from the bottom of the sea all the way up to the platform, going through thousands of meters of water. And they will require also the proper integration of all of these complex systems with sensors, multi-phase meters, sampling units to understand what is happening and be able to control flow assurance and also well control issues in general. So another one that we can talk and we have mentioned about shale gas. I guess for shale gas, an enabling technology that everybody has heard about it, or most people have heard about it, is the capability of geosteering and horizontal wells. Be able to drill and control the position of horizontal wells was one of the enabling technologies that allow for the development of shale gas, together with multi-stage fracturing. But in addition to that, nowadays, there's new requirements. For example, yes, we need to fracture, but we need to do multi-stage fracturing. And the amounts of water that are being used are huge. So fracturing with less water, technologies that will allow us to fracture with less water are becoming very, very important. Also, very important to be able to determine where are the sweet spots. In some areas in the United States, we have seen that maybe a small percentage of the fractures that are placed in a long horizontal well are the ones that are contributing to the majority of the production. So if we could identify where are the sweet spots, we can avoid some of those fractures that are not going to contribute much to the production and just concentrate on the sweet spots that are going to provide the production. And that is happening with the high resolution seismics and the population, the proper attribute populations into the seismic. We also need to identify where are the zones that have good completion quality, which are the zones that fractures can be effective, and not try to fracture with a massive brute force as we originally did in the industry at the beginning of the shale gas development. So Mexico has the advantage that now can take some of those lessons learned and implement these technologies for the development of their shale gas. Integration is going to be very important. I mentioned that before, integration going from the seismic, the proper modeling, the completions, the monitoring of the fractures. We are participating together with the IMP, for example, funded by the CENER and CONACYT under the Fondos Sectoriales de Hidrocarburos on a new project to be able to better characterize the geometry of hydraulic fractures. So understanding hydraulic fractures in environments like in Chicontepec or in shale gas is going to be very important, and these new technologies are also play an important role. So on heavy oil, I can say that on heavy oil there's a lot of issues that are very important. Some of the key enabling technologies are on well construction, modeling, and monitoring. But let me say that if you think that the technologies that have been successfully applied in places like in Canada, in the tar sands, in Alberta, or even in California, Bakersfield, and so forth, you can easily take them and implement them in environments like in Mexico or Latin America. That is not the case. About 5 years ago, I was the director of one of the Schlumberger technology centers dedicated for heavy oil. And one of the tasks that we took was to understand how those technologies like steam injection, SAGD, TIE could be applied to tropical environments like in Latin America. And let me just tell you that is not straightforward. And there's a lot of challenges, and you need to customize those technologies. You cannot just copy and paste. These challenges are very big. And Schlumberger, the way we have taken these themes is we have taken them very, very seriously. And we have put them not in one of our research centers or technology centers, but we are really using the knowledge of a global reach that we're fortunate to have with our research institutes. In this slide, you can see at the top the pure research institutes that we have in Boston, in Brazil, in Cambridge, in Russia, and in the Middle East, in Tehran. In blue are all of the engineering centers that we have around the world. And on green at the bottom, the manufacturing centers that we have. One of them, by the way, is in Mexico, in Monterrey. So it's this cross-pollination that we see that is very, very valuable. The knowledge and the experience that some of the local universities in those places have with whom we have very, very close contract and relationships are very important to us for addressing these challenges. But the lesson is, the message is that these are big challenges that not a single institution can solve, not even a single service company or an oil company. We're going to require collaboration. Pemex and the Secretary of Energy have realized that, and they have launched recently, a few years ago, los Fondos Sectoriales de Hidrocarburos. This is a great program that has been launching some R&D collaboration projects funded by the Secretaría of Energy and managed by the Consejo Nacional de Ciencia y Tecnología, the CONACYT, which they are addressing some of the key energy challenges that Mexico is facing. And recently they came with one of their demands for projects, asking for integrated projects to solve 7 issues for enhanced oil recovery for mature fields, which I mentioned is also going to be critical, and one for shale gas. And we know they're also about to launch another one for deep water. So this is a great initiative, and it's a good way of giving or applying some of the taxes that are being obtained from the oil in Mexico. So in my last slide, I would like just to emphasize the importance of the collaboration strength. As I mentioned before, these are big challenges, also big opportunities that we all have. We don't believe that a single institution or a single oil company can take it by themselves. We believe that the collaboration is going to become more and more important. It's going to require collaboration of research institutions, consortia, university, operators, professional societies, and certainly service companies. So to summarize in my conclusions, I would like just to say that as in many parts of the world, in Mexico, the area for the easy oil is gone. As we mentioned, deep water, shale gas, heavy oil, and mature fields will be the new energy frontiers in Mexico, with many challenges and opportunities. New technologies will be more critical than ever before and will be required to address the non-conventional challenges that we will have. But they will have to be customized and adapted to the environment of Mexico. The challenges ahead are not only technical. We also need to recognize that they also involve people. And by that I mean internal and external to the oil industry. For the internal people, training and development will be critical. We need to give them the tools to be able to work outside of the comfort zone. For the people external to the oil industry, it's going to be very important to keep them well informed and with the right facts. Also, having the correct tax incentives will be very important. That was the case, for example, with the non-conventionals in Canada, which in my opinion, the Alberta state did a wonderful job providing the right tax incentives, and that allowed the development of many of the new technologies that like SAGB and some of the other ones that they did. So you need to have the right tax incentives, and we will need that one to influence the development of the non-conventionals. And finally, and again, I would say that to address those challenges and to capture the great opportunities of the energy sectors in Mexico, collaboration will be paramount. So let me finish with my talk with that so that we can move to the Q&A session.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jorge. That was fascinating. I certainly learned a lot. So thank you very much. And just quickly before we pass to the Q&A, I noticed some people did sign up as we went along. So just a reminder, it seems most people have worked this out, but on the right-hand side of the page, you'll see a chat icon. Under that, you can pose your question there, or I would actually prefer it if you, on the right-hand, you'll see a question tab if you pose your question there, and I'll be moderating as we go along. Also, you might notice there's a character limit. It's a bit like Twitter. So if you have a really long question, just put part 1, part 2. And also, for those who've asked, the presentation will be made available afterwards. We're also recording this webinar, so you'll be able to share it with your friends and relive it afterwards. So yeah, without further ado, let me start putting some of these questions up. So let's start with this very first question, right at the beginning, actually, of the talks. This is for you. Everyone, hopefully I can see this. What is the greatest obstacle and best opportunity for renewable energy? Thank you, Jorge.
Well, we know that renewable energies is clearly in the agenda of the Secretary of Energy, but the greatest obstacles are not. I would say they are not particular to Mexico. They are all the same as all over the world. The obstacles of the renewable energies is probably the cost of those resources. The costs are still fairly high, and when we have new energy sources like natural gas, that is very cost effective, that we're still gonna see, and we require those in the future. I don't believe that they are in conflict with each other. I think we can even see some projects where renewables are being used to develop hydrocarbons. For example, there's a big project in California with Chevron where they're using solar panels to produce some of the steam that is required to um, uh, stimulate some of the heavy oils. We also see the possibility of applying the knowledge of the oil industry to some of the renewables, like geothermal is a good example, where we are taking a lot of the lessons learned, and we are developing more and more efficiently every day geothermal resources. So it's a broad question. Renewables energies, they are going to continue to grow, and that is good. We believe that they should continue to grow, and the technology and efforts needs to be put into place. Uh, but the introduction of those new in the energy sector, the introduction of a new resource requires many years. It's not something that happens from one year to the next one. So the same thing is going to happen with renewables. And in the meantime, what we need to do is to concentrate in making sure that the resources that we require today from hydrocarbons are produced in a responsible and sustainable way, so that they can fill up the gap. Hopefully, in the future, we will move to renewable energies, but we know that that's many years from now, and we'll be happy to see the increase of renewables little by little over the years.
Thank you. We have a technical question. We don't have a huge amount of time, but maybe people can stay a bit later, but I'll try and include as many questions as people are asking as we go along. So there's a technical
Yes.
question here.
Yeah, sorry, I should have explained some of the terms, but the question is, what is geosteering? Yes, geosteering is the technology that is being used to drive the direction of horizontal wells. Is the technology where the drilling string not only has the beats and the stabilizers and all of the equipment that requires to drill the hole, but it also has the capability of steering the direction of the well as it's being drilled. It has sensors and communications to the surface, normally done by pressure pulses, and in that way we can know what is the position of the beat at the bottom of the well with respect to the horizons, and steering the right direction to make sure that the well stays in the areas that we want it to stay.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Well, the question is, what technologies are being used or considered to secure, protect oil and gas pipelines from criminal activity? That is a good question. I don't believe I can answer that question. It's not an area that we have looked into it or that we have worked on it, but I know that there is one of the issues and concerns, not only criminal activities, but also the possibilities of leakages and terrorism attacks, or in Mexico, we know that stealing of oil is also a big problem. We don't know exactly where it is happening. And I know that Pemex is looking into that. All over the world, people have a lot of concerns with the oil pipelines and gas pipelines, and there's a lot of technology that is being used to guarantee their proper placement and operation over the years. But that's an area that I'm afraid I cannot answer.
We'll have to have another webinar on looking at this. Here's the next question. I believe that everyone can see these questions, so it shouldn't be a problem to simply answer or to paraphrase as you.
The current regulations inhibit technology development between Pemex and private companies. How can this be improved? Well, I'm glad to say that new programs like the Fondos Sectoriales de Hidrocarburos, which I mentioned, actually promotes and stimulates the participation and collaboration of different R&D institutions. And that is one of the ways in which we're bringing Pemex closer to institutions. For example, in one of the projects in which we're participating with the IMP, and we're participating with the UNAM, la Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México, with the Universidad Autónoma de Ciudad Juárez. From our side, we participate with some of our research institutions and engineering institutions from overseas. And the advantages of this program is actually the ability of bringing and sharing the knowledge from other industries, like in this case, or from other companies, like in this case, a private company like a Schlumberger, to Pemex, and to together we're learning. All of us were learning, and as well as the IMP, as well as the universities that we're working on. So I know that Pemex has been opening. Now they have the incentivized projects, and they have opened the doors to work and have closer relationship with the private sector.
Wonderful. This one, I believe, is probably related. I don't know if you'll want to answer this.
Yeah. What is the most important issues that the energy reform has to include? Well, I mean, I don't want to get into discussions of the energy reform. I think that it will be a speculation at this point in time. We know that they are committed. We know that the new government realizes about the challenges that Mexico has, and they have announced that they will have a new energy reform this year. There's a lot of lobbying that is happening between the different parties. So the extent of how the energy reform, or what is going to happen with the energy reform, it could be anybody's speculation, and we don't want to do that now. But the most important issues that they need to cover is basically how in Mexico how we can utilize the great resources that are still available in a way that is going to benefit the economy of all Mexicans. And I think they're well aware of that, and they're working very hard on that.
Thank you. Here's the next question. I want to thank you for making your answers so succinct as well. This is very helpful. It means we can answer more questions. So the next question, I believe that word is development, unconventionals development.
What do you view as the most real risks to unconventionals development at this stage? Well, I mentioned some of the real risks. I think that one that is very important is, in my opinion, is the ones that are related with people. I think that the technologies, we will find the technologies, we are developing the technologies, they will come. So we can talk about a lot of the technical challenges. I'm confident that the industry, we're going to face them. I'm more concerned about the risks that the social aspects might present. As I mentioned, I think that we need to keep the public well informed. And I also think that within the industry, we have the big challenge of training and providing the proper capacitation to all of our experts so that they can utilize those resources properly. So the real risks, to me, the most important ones are the ones related with people and social issues.
The next question is actually related, and maybe you could talk a little bit more about the technological side here of how to adapt the US experience to the Mexican experience with unconventionals development.
Well, when you say to be as successful as in the US, certainly, in my opinion, and there's different opinions about that. There's some people that believe that the non-conventionals have not been successful in the US. I disagree. I believe that they have been very, very successful. But you also need to take them into the context that they were pioneers and there was a lot of lessons learned. So what do we need to do in Mexico is actually to learn from those experiences. We need to take the good things and be aware of the problems that were faced. We need to avoid the mistakes that have been made in the past. Some of those problems was, for example, the use of what we call the brute force at the beginning, doing massive fracturing without thinking about the consequences of the resources and the traffic and the problems that may occur to some of the local communities. But we have those lessons, and in the US have done a great job recognizing them and making more efficient, reducing the footprint, utilizing the water in a much more effective way. So basically what we need to do is just look at the lessons learned, take the good things, and be aware of the problems and challenges that were faced during the development of and learning during the learning curve that the US went through when implementing these non-conventionals.
Wonderful. The next question is actually also related, asking about where you mentioned at the beginning that some of the environmental concerns or concerns from certain groups in the United States are unfounded.
Yes, this is a good question. Basically, I don't know if everybody can read it, but it says, Jorge, please explain the basis for your strong statement that environmental concerns related to fracking are unfounded. Is there enough data and scientific evidence to support that statement? Or is it more appropriate to say that we do not know yet? That's a very good question. Yes, I think that we have a lot of technical and scientific evidence. I think that we know that we don't have the answers to everything, but fracturing, hydraulic fracturing, we have been doing that for decades. It's not something new in the oil industry. It's something that we have been doing for many, many years. So some of the concerns that the public has is the risk of creating earthquakes or the possibility of contaminating the aquifers. Contaminating the aquifers is a valid concern, certainly, but it's not something new. We drill wells. Every well that we drill has to go through the aquifers. And these technologies that we have learned a lot from deep water drilling, from all of kind of environments on how to properly isolate the wells and how to protect the aquifers. Remember, the fractures happen happen thousands of meters below the aquifers, but the public has the opinion that the fractures might reach the aquifers and contaminate the aquifers, for example. That is completely non-technical and non-scientific. There is scientific evidence. We know what is the length of the fractures. We know what is the geometry of the fractures. We know how to control them. There are some valid concerns that people don't talk much about it. For example, methane, the release of methane as you are drilling the wells. Well, or when you are testing the well, that's something that needs to be taken into account. Methane is a powerful greenhouse gas. It's probably about, people consider it's about 6 to 7 times more, has a greater greenhouse effect than CO2, and is the second component released by the humans that contributes to green gas effects. So these are things that we really need to be more careful about it. But we have the technologies. We know how to do it. The main problem is that the public opinion has been misinformed. The communication, some of the news media was a hot topic, and they put a lot of news that were not properly funded, not without scientific evidence, without technical data, and actually misled the public with a lot of concerns that are not the right concerns. Let's put it this way. Things like the increase of traffic that it may happen and the impact in local communities are probably more important and have a bigger effect. And those are issues that now we need to recognize and have a plan, a good plan, before we start the big development of shale gas.
Thank you. I believe we have 2 more questions, and then we'll probably have to close it. So hopefully you don't mind just 2 more questions, Jorge, and then we can shut it down. But I believe the next question is beyond my technological capacity. So bear with me as you answer this one.
What would be an optimum enhanced oil recovery strategy for a reservoir like Akal, considering that it is a carbonate? Yes, Akal certainly has a lot of, it's a natural fracture reservoir. It is offshore. All of the EOR or IOR strategies is something that everybody has looked at it. Pemex has put a lot of efforts into that, and the big challenge is, like in Cantarell, is how to move the residual oil that remains in the matrix. We know that the oil that is in the fractures drains fairly good, and that has been the main production over the years. But what is left behind, that is the challenge for a good EOR project in Akal. And for that, Pemex has been working with a lot of institutions and universities, both in Mexico, with the IMP, research institutions and universities in Mexico, as well as overseas. Working with these lead institutions, they have looked, for example, at what kind of surfactants can be injected so that they can better stimulate the fractures, and ways of controlling the movement of those surfactants so that they don't go only through the fractures, but they also get into the matrix. So there's a lot of opportunities. We need to be able, as I mentioned, to be able to first quantify really what is the residual oil that remains in the pores of the matrix. And then we need to find the technologies on how to go back and have an enhanced recovery method that can squeeze that remaining oil, which is a lot of it, out of the rocks. And I know that there's going to be some projects for that. We several service companies and Pemex, we're all working together trying to find what would be the best technologies to be able to squeeze more oil out of those rocks.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm actually going to make this the last question. I saw somebody else ask something about CENER, and I will pass that on to Jorge directly, and we can get that one answered for you. But this will be the last question. I don't want to keep anyone too long, and Jorge has lots of other things to do. So if you could just make this the last question, I think it's a good one to end on. What does Mexico have to do technologically and politically to succeed in developing its unconventional hydrocarbon resources?
Well, it's gonna require a big strategy, and I think that it is happening. I'm glad to see that it is happening. I'm glad to see that Pemex is recognizing that one at the Secretaría of Energía as well. Uh, as I mentioned, in my opinion, uh, is going to require first of all training and training of the people, getting the right knowledge of all of our exports. I'm speaking about not only Pemex but also the service companies that we are working in Mexico. We need to have the right people there with the right technologies, and then at the same time is going to require a good strategy to educate the people and some of our politicians. I think that is going to be very important so that they understand what those challenges are and what the effect of having the right tax incentives play in promoting the development of these very viable resources.
Wonderful. Thank you again, the person who asked the question about CENER. You can email me that if you like, and I'll make sure I get that answered for you. But everybody else, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Jorge, for a wonderful discussion and presentation. And we hope that everyone will join us for our next webinar. We will be announcing something in the next few days. And I'm just going to give a quick plug for our La Jolla Energy Conference coming up on May 20th to 22nd. We'll be discussing a number of issues, including Mexico's energy, a lot on unconventionals, LNG. You can find more information about the La Jolla Conference at www.iamericas.org/La Jolla. This webinar will be available on our website. We have recorded it, and I will also make the presentation available to everybody. And if you'd like any more information and to stay up to date on all of our analysis, please follow us on Twitter at @IOA_energy. Again, I'm Alexis Arthur. I'm working in the energy team here, and I would just like to thank everybody who is here, but most of all, to Jorge Lopez de Cardenas for taking the time out of your lunchtime in Houston to be with us. Thank you so much. It was absolutely wonderful.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. We hope to have you again. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day.